I work for International Finance Corporation, which is part of the World Bank Group. So you can say it's the private sector arm of the World Bank Group. So I'm an architect by training. I've been working on sustainability and energy efficiency of buildings throughout my career. And we started this program at the World Bank Group. We started this program on green buildings roughly about 10 years ago. Once we realized that buildings are such a big contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, and also one of the most cost-efficient ways of reducing greenhouse gases. So let me jump into my presentation, and I can very quickly go through what we do and where we are working on green affordable homes. And maybe, as Nicholas pointed out, I can spend at the end about a few more minutes on the specific project that he mentioned. So as I mentioned, we are primarily dealing with the private sector. Sometimes we do work with government projects as well, but that's kind of a rarity. It's mostly through the private sector. Unfortunately, a lot of the development that's happening, especially on the lower income segment, is driven by the government. That's opening up now to private investment and private development. And that's where we are trying to help those private projects to go through. So stepping back on talking about India, I think the scale of the problem is pretty obvious to most of the people in this webinar, that we are at about 17% of the world's population, with roughly about 30% living in cities and growing. So roughly the entire state of the entire population of US is living in Indian cities right now, and that's going to almost double in the next couple of decades. And the government has already started working on the affordable housing shortage that's very apparent to everyone here by starting to construct about 10 million new homes. The target was 2020. I think that's going to be delayed a little bit, but it is very ambitious. And these homes, if these 10 million homes, out of which only 20% meet a certain green standard, we would be able to meet a huge difference. And just imagine if you're able to convert all of them to green, that would be fantastic. So these are just some numbers. I won't go into the individual numbers here, but if you convert that into something that's easily understandable, for every 4 green homes that are built, will save enough water to supply 1 additional home. For every 5 homes that are built, we would save enough energy to supply 1 additional home. There is also a significant health issue here, public health issue, as many of you have experienced or seen in pictures, that Indian cities are becoming increasingly polluted, especially with regards to air pollution. A lot of that does come from transport, but a huge amount comes from the energy that's needed to build buildings and to operate buildings. And if we can cut down some of that, there will obviously be not just climate change benefit, but also public health benefits. So the challenges that we see in India, and these are in some ways quite global as well, building green is, firstly, there is a lack of awareness of the end user benefits. So if you go out and talk to people, and some of that has been pointed out in earlier presentations, that people think this is not meant for the lower income or the middle income category. This is something that's very kind of upmarket. That myth has to be broken, and it has been in many projects. And the lack of technical know-how. This is not a very difficult challenge to overcome, actually, because as was shown in Girish's presentation, none of these technologies are kind of rocket science. These are easily available. A lot of them have been handed over through our vernacular architecture. So building green is not complex, and in many cases not very costly as well if you plan it well in advance. And of course, the solutions may vary from one place to the other, depending on the context, whether you have a dense urban settlement or an open land where you can build a sprawling single-story building. Then the last aspect is lack of green finance. Green finance has been available for bigger project, more like larger scale projects, even infrastructure projects. But for green affordable homes, in the past has been limited, but thankfully that has been changing and changing fast. There's a lot of green finance available. In fact, now the problem has reversed, that there is more finance available, green finance available, than there are takers. And takers have to meet certain criteria. It's not like any project that claims to be green can access that. It has to be at scale. Obviously, the investors look at large scale investments, and it has to meet certain verifiable standards that can be trusted. So those are two very important criteria that projects should be looking at. So with that in mind, we came up with our program roughly about 7-8 years ago, which combined both investments. So we invest sometimes directly with building developers, and we've done a few of those in India as well with low-income affordable housing projects. We sometimes invest with banks, with local banks or housing finance companies, and help them in an advisory capacity to develop green building products, like green mortgages, for example, that can help their customers borrow money for their green projects. So I'll share one of the examples later here. Sometimes if we get a chance, we also work on green building codes and policies. So we have so far helped 6 countries develop the green building codes. India is not one of those. India already had an energy efficiency code before we started the program here, but we've been working a little bit on the incentive side as well. However, I do personally feel that incentives are a stopgap solution. They cannot be sustained for a very long time. If the market really understands the benefit of green and does it even with or without incentives, I think that's when we would have really passed a threshold which would kickstart upstreaming or mass scaling of this. Then the last part of this is our certification, a standard that we have developed globally called EDGE for green buildings, with the primary intent to connect it to investments. Now, not every EDGE project gets IFC investment, and not every IFC investment gets an EDGE certificate, but it is something that we have developed because we found a gap in the market for something that was fairly straightforward, focused, and yet comprehensive and ambitious enough to change the market and change the path that we are taking towards climate change. So the first issue was, what really is a green building? How do you define it? So rather than go into a complicated matrix, we said, if you can firstly reduce your resource efficiency by at least 20%, by resource efficiency, I mean energy, water, and material usage by 20%, that's the quantitative aspect of it. Then it has to be verified by an independent third party. Now, this is very important if the project is looking for investments. And thirdly, it should have quantified impact reporting, which should also include impact on GHG emissions. So all of that is extremely important, and we have developed this in our own system as well. So with the EDGE standard, we have 20% improvement on water usage in the building as compared to the local baseline, 20% lower energy usage as compared to local baseline, and 20% lower embodied energy of construction materials used in the building, again, as compared to the local baseline. So that's our global standard. Anywhere you go, this same standard applies. It's just the baseline that changes from one building to the other, one location to the other, or one country to the other. And then to make it easily accessible, to kind of break that barrier between engineers and consultants and developers and building owners, we've created a free software, free online software at edgebuildings.com, where the entire, all the cities that we are working in, all the building types that we're working in, all the data is in there, all you need to do is just enter your location, your building type, and a few basic questions on the size and the geometry of the building. And it develops a baseline for you, a unique baseline for your project based on the prevalent practices in your region for that building type, and allows you to improve on your baseline. So for example, here, what you're seeing is a screenshot of a typical project where you're seeing the baseline is this much energy consumption. And by selecting a few different measures, there is a whole list beyond this as well, which goes right from passive design down to renewable energy. So you can choose different measures, and it gives you instant feedback on the cost reduction, the operational cost reduction, and the incremental cost per housing unit, and the payback in years. So you can actually play around with the measures and choose the one that really fits your needs, your aesthetic requirements, and availability, etc. The target, as I said, is 20%. So here, if this number is 20% or more, then you meet the energy standard. And similarly, you have to meet the water and material standard as well. One interesting point here, what you see here, which may not be very clear, is virtual energy for comfort. Now, this is a challenge in affordable housing because the operational cost of these homes is not really very high to start with, because most of them don't use air conditioning. They may not have a lot of appliances. They may have a little bit of light, but that's only used during the after the sunset hours. So it's very hard to make a case for green buildings just based on operational cost saving. It has to include the thermal comfort, the improved living standard, the quality of life inside the homes. And it is sometimes hard to quantify that. So the way we have dealt with it is come up with this calculation for virtual energy for comfort. So this is saying that this is the additional amount of energy that would be needed in this non-air conditioned house to make it comfortable. So just in case in the future, if somebody installs an air conditioning, this is the additional amount of energy they would be using. So a lower virtual energy means a more comfortable house. If you completely go down to zero, that means no air conditioning, no mechanical cooling is needed in that house anymore. So we've tried to overcome that challenge through this method. So you're most welcome to go to our website, edgebuildings.com, register for free and try it out. There is no charge for the usage of the software. And as I said, it encompasses every single country in the world. And in India, we have about 65 different locations. And for each location, you can select a different income category and just plug in your project details and analyze it. Once the project goes through the entire evaluation and analysis and auditing at two different stages, at the post-design stage and at the post-construction stage, then it is awarded with these certificates. Being a financial institution, we have aligned our certification very closely with these international green finance standards with the intent of facilitating ease of green finance access to them. So even if IFC is not investing in that project, we want the projects that are going for green to get investment from one of these or other green investment opportunities that are out there right now. Now, the other aspect of working on this is working with banks, with housing finance companies and banks who are investing in local products and who are giving finance to home buyers. So what is the case for them? Again, that was a challenge. Initially, they were extremely reluctant to look at this segment. The case that we make to them is, firstly, it's a reduced default risk. If they invest in green homes, there is data to show that the default rate really goes down because people are saving money. They are saving operational costs, so they have more money left in the pocket to pay back the bank. Then there is reduced asset risk because these are less prone to temperature changes. Then there is this huge opportunity that is now available, especially with regards to green finance being available internationally. And it is a growing market, especially in India. So with that, those four aspects, we've been able to convince several local banks and financial institutions to work with us. And the way we work with them is firstly on the investment side, we provide them, so actually before the investment comes, we provide them advisory on how to structure their green products. We provide them training on green buildings, on how to actually evaluate. In fact, they don't have to evaluate. It's the certification which is already doing the evaluation, the assessment, that they just have to accept. But still, they need to know how to actually quantify the impact, how to report it if they're looking for external finance. So we do provide some training on that, and how to convince the clients as well, their clients. We work on the market creation. So through our EDGE certification, so far we've already certified roughly about 3 million square meters or 30 million square feet of space in India. And our plans are to substantially increase that in the coming years. And then we do provide investments in different formats. As I said, not all certified projects get invested in, but it is certainly one of the criteria. There are a couple of examples here. This is in Colombia, one of their bigger housing finance companies, Bank Colombia. We work with them on this the same format that I just talked to you about, by firstly building the client capacity, raising awareness in the market, and then the capacity of the staff. And it has really shot through the roof. It's gone through the roof. Within a span of 4 or 5 years, the number of projects that have been certified, the number of homes has gone from 0 to about 13,000, and more than 1.2 million square meters of their portfolio has been certified. And they ended up issuing a green bond as well, where IFC has also invested. Now, this is a completely different example, and this is the one that Nicholas was mentioning. We are working with a local housing finance company in India called Avas. So they are primarily lending money to beneficiary-led construction, meaning people who want to build their own houses in north and western parts of India. And they are quite keen on making at least a part of their portfolio to be green. So this is a very difficult market because these are individuals, some of whom may not have a proper understanding or awareness of green. So a lot of work has to be done on that front. Plus the whole regular green building certification that works very well with developers and corporations doesn't really work at that scale. So we are trying to come up with a simpler system, working through the bank, training their people, and coming up with a simplified version of the EDGE software that you just saw, something that's very, very basic. That is, when somebody comes to the bank to apply for a loan, they're given some options right away, saying that, okay, these are some of the green packages or green bundles that you can choose. And each of those green bundles would save them at least 20% on energy, water, materials. They would be provided the cost and the benefit of those green bundles immediately. And there will be a pitch made to them that this will also make your house more comfortable and also make your house more resilient, because power shortage, water cuts are not uncommon in many of those areas that they cover. So you can be more resilient to those kind of situations by having a greener home where you can maybe produce your own electricity, maybe save rainwater for harvesting, maybe reduce your demand for energy and water. So by making that case, we are convincing them. In fact, the bank is convincing their clients. And once they agree, the bank agrees to invest that extra amount, if there is an extra amount needed to make that house green, and kind of bundles it, puts it in the whole package of the loan that they're providing. And then the bank officers, the engineers, are being trained to support them on the ground as well. So we've been working with different banks and financial institutions here and trying out different approaches, investing directly, and these kind of advisory solutions are also really exciting because this is a market that's that was not really tapped in before. We have in the past also tried to work on bringing some of the top housing, affordable housing developers and create awareness and work with manufacturers to try to reduce the cost of some of those materials as well. These are some of the projects that we have certified through our EDGE system. You can see that they've all saved more than 20% on energy, water, and material through very simple solutions that are market ready. None of them have cost too much. The usual payback is roughly about 1 to 2 years. And that's about it. So we are open to scaling this up. And I think it's high time we did that. And for that, we need cooperation and collaboration between all the stakeholders.